All right, welcome back. And so today we are going to be doing a new plant family. And this is not as complicated and as long as some of the ones that we've seen before. And you should be familiar with it because on the screen we have the snapdragons. The snapdragon on the old area of the garden. So this is now where the succulent garden is. In the old days, in horticulture, we did a survival garden, and that's when the college hosted a breast cancer awareness event. And so we created this little pocket for kind of being the backstage of that event, and people were very happy to see this pink ribbon made out of snapdragons. So that is going to be the plant type for this family, so you should be familiar with it. So we get to look at the family tree for this individual. And so when we look at the family tree, we're going to be focusing right about in this area. So we're going to have the Scrofulariaceae or the scrofs. And this is Scrofularia caliantha. It is important for you to know that several years ago, all of the members that we're going to see today were placed in the Scrofularia or in scroff family. And used to be gigantic, but as the genetic work has been accomplished and finished with some of those plants, they created a brand new family, which is the Plantaginaceae that we're going to be looking at today. But if you can see with the branching, the Scrofulariaceae is very close to it. So that is why they were all considered as one, but now separate because of the genes and the DNA. There's also another new family, which is known as the Primaceae. That was also Scrofulariaceae before, and that is going to include the monkey flowers. Monkey flowers, Primaceae, monkey flower family. Yes, Dr. Naomi Fraga out of Rancho Santana Botanic Garden, she is the one who specializes and is the expert on mimulus and other monkey flower plants. So that became right here, the Primaceae, next to a few others. And so we get to look at the Plantaginaceae, which is going to be the type specimen for this family, or what we refer to as the plantain, not to be confused with the edible banana or the cooking banana, which has the same common name. But this is a group of itself, Plantaginaceae, plantain family. You can see the distribution, very, very widely spread. So you find that throughout the world, including a few that are just native to California. We're looking at dicots, 90 genera, 1900 species. Obviously, we're not going to see through them. And we're just going to focus on some of the few that make it into the commercial horticulture industry. There is no real way to or characteristic to really separate the members of this family. It's probably easier for you to just learn the different genera like Anthorhinum, Snapdragon, and know that it belongs in the Plantaginaceae. Otherwise, there is no real way. So plantain, here's Plantago, which is the type specimen. Plantago major. In most areas, it is considered a weed. It grows out in lawn areas, turf areas, gardens. It's been used or was used as food. So the leaves and every part is edible. Has really good vitamins and minerals. And again, it was brought here for that, and now it has escaped, and you find it coming up in many, many areas. Here is the close-up of the leaf of our Plantago. And here's where it came up in one of the garden beds, and I kind of kept it because it was in the right place and it's edible. So if somebody wishes to eat it, by all means, they could have just harvest the leaves and made a salad. But it's showing us the flower cluster that are coming out here. And so when we look at the flower clusters, there's not a lot of big characteristics. Most of the flowers, at least for Plantago, are going to be inconspicuous. So you have a feather-like or a feathery stigma that will catch the pollen. You have the sepals that are right here that are not too bright. And below that, you have the ovary. On the other side, we have some of the male flowers that are now has the anthers outside for releasing the pollen. This is a very inconspicuous flower of plantain, but this is the type specimen, as we have found other plants that have nicer flowers, then those are selected. And so here is a fully mature flower clusters with stamens and stigma, or stigma receptive, stamens releasing the pollen. And as time goes by, you have a fruit. And then one of the characteristics that you will find with many of these plant groups members is that they're going to have a persistent style. And that's not a big characteristic, but it is one of the few things that are going to be the same. And the fruit for these individuals are going to be known as a capsule. It will open once it matures to release the seeds. And so sometimes by force, sometimes by the wind. And so that's how they have managed to go out into different areas and become a noxious weed. So here is kind of the fruit for this individual. You find some of them in California. Here's Plantago lanceolata, very small, kind of like a dune type plant. You may find it in some of the marsh areas around here, or if we had some intact dunes, you may also find it there. So this is a California native individual. And here's the one that has all the flowers. It's flowering at the present time in the close-up of it. Now, when we look at individuals that have nicer flowers, such as our anthorhinum or our snapdragon, then we're going to have our bilobate. Kind of, we saw this with the mints. We have the two lips. One is going to be the upper lip, and one is going to be the lower lip. The petals will form a tube, and inside you're going to have the reproductive structure. So it's a mechanism for the bee to land and go inside and take the nectar and take the pollen. When we look at the flower and we cut it, we find the 4 anthers here, not a problem. And then we have the stigma that is connected to the ovary that will become the fruit later on. If we look at a side view of just the reproductive part, that's how it's going to be. Very similar to the Plantago, the type specimen, but a little bit now longer just because of the floral tube of the snapdragons. And you can see here some of the sepals and the other flower parts that we've seen before. Here is Anthorhinum hispanica. And this is a perennial plant. I know most of our snapdragons that we plant here are going to be perennial, but treated as annuals. This is from Europe, Mediterranean, Spain, Italy, France. And it's a kind of small ground cover, shrubby looking thing. And it grows for throughout the year. And you can see nice hairs on the leaf that allows it to be drought tolerant and survive dryness. So Anthorhinum hispanica or hispanicum. And then we have climbing snapdragon. This is Anthorhinum kelogi, and this is a California native. And you can see the stems that are twining around other shrubs. I think this is deerweed or something else. And you can see the tiny snapdragon-like flowers. And that's that's kind of gonna be kind of like the clue if the flowers resemble a snapdragon or is there snapdragon-like. Most likely it'll fall under this category, sometimes with a closed mouth or sometimes with an open mouth, but it's kind of that type of flower look that we're gonna be, that's gonna may help you. So here's the face of that climbing snapdragon native to our coastal California and into the Chaparral area. And here's another native tiny snapdragon that you find here in California as well. Pteranum nutali or mutali, I think is the name for this individual. And then we also have our digitalis, which I think I gave it to you about 2 weeks ago, our common foxglove. And this is European. Consider almost every other member to be somewhat poisonous, especially digitalis. Its chemicals are used for creating drugs to stabilize the heart palpitation. And so it is recorded where people have eaten the plant and they have died because of a heart problem or heart congestion. So please do not eat it. Kind of bell shape. Again, we have the upper lip right here and we have the lower lip. Not close as in the Snapdragon, but you still have the same features. And when we open the flower, here you see exactly the same thing. The stamens right here, and then the stigma and the style and the ovary leading to the back. And when the petals fall off, then you have the ovary with that persistent style that I mentioned before. That would be kind of common, but not a very good feature. And here, as the styles now wither and turn brown, you can see them still lingering on some of those fruits. I think I shared with this photograph with you, Rogers Garden, where they use foxglove. And then we have Isosplexis canariensis, commonly known as Canary Island foxglove. So this is Mediterranean origin, at least in the Mediterranean climate. It's making its way here. I've seen it in a few stores, but it's still, I think people love foxgloves more than this. It's a little bit showier and nicer. And so here's some of the flowers for this Isoplexis canariensis, Canary Island snapdragon. And then there's obviously going to be some hybridizing. So Isoplexis probably went with the Canary Islands away from Europe and it became its own species. But as people have now brought them together, they have hybridized them. So there is a Isoplexis and a digitalis hybrid. And here we see a combination of both of them, kind of trumpet shape, but still open like the others. But also within this family, we have the penstemons. And penstemons are going to be perennials for most part. And they're also very highly used in some of the landscape, as you can see here. Here's the flower, similar to everything else we've seen before. You see the stamens here, and that stigma. And then as those go away, you can see the persistent style and the same ovary as it's becoming into the fruit. And here is Griffith Park. And after a fire, we happen to find Pestamon spectabilis, which is native to, once again, our area, coastal sage-grouse, chaparral. And so here's one of the walking trails and showing you the flowers right here. So there are several penstemons that are going to be native to our area. And there's a side view, stamens on top, and then the stigma there for the bee to kind of go inside and make sure it makes contact with the reproductive part. And this is a high altitude. So this is in Camp Sierra, Camp Sealy, up in the mountains, Angeles National Forest. And I happened to find this penstemon, which I have not really tried to figure out what the species is, but it was a nice find. And then you can see the flowers. So up in the mountains, you may come across this. And also related to the same, you have the genus Angelonia, which is now available for color. Here is also going to be kind of open, but now the petals are going to be a lot more pronounced. So here's kind of like a throat, like a snapdragon, but here you can see more of a separation on the petals and a kind of smallish, not too deep type tube. Here's the white form of that, and even a purplish with the white. And you can see the stigma and the stamens up here, and that's just a mouth where the bee will land on the petals and go inside and take the nectar. And here's a nice side view of that, kind of like an open mouth. And then from Australia, we have Parahebe. And from a distance, it may resemble a very young, or the leaf of a very young eucalyptus, or the younger eucalyptus leaves. And in fact, in the wild, it grows under eucalyptus tree, keeping in mind that eucalyptus leaves have a lot of oils that may deter many plants from growing underneath it. And so this plant, Parahebe perfoliata, has definitely evolved with eucalyptus, and it can grow underneath them without any problem. So keep it in mind, people are having difficulty because they have too many eucalyptus trees and they need something to soften the area. Maybe this could be a good choice. I've seen it now for sale at Armstrong. When I had it and I took this photograph, it was more of a rarity thing. Here's the side view of the flowers, and there's the face view. You can see the stigma and the stamens, and not too specialized, but it is there. And then we have Veronica, this individual right here that you may see it. It's often for sale. And I've seen it also in different types of gardens. So this is Speedwell, Veronica, genus Veronica, common name Speedwell. So this is some of the ornamental ones that you may come across, and or something like this. Here's Veronica, and here's a different form. Here's with the blue flowers. You can see the stamens coming out and the stigma also coming out here. It is not uncommon to see something like some of these Veronicas kind of come up by themselves. It's sometimes considered as a tiny, not too invasive weed, but it's often a volunteer in different areas. So keep your eyes open. You might see it growing out there. So here's a close-up of that. And here's different individual on different Veronica. This one may look something like a sage, so just be aware. It has opposite leaves, it has a flower cluster, but obviously when we compare it with some of the sages, they do not have the same bilobate leaves or leaf flowers and or something else. And then we have Bacopa, the genus Bacopa. That are often used as a ground cover. This is a wild form that I found in Jalisco, Mexico, and you can see the flowers here. Or in a wildflower that is not used as often in California wildflower mixes is a plant by the name of Chinese houses. Here growing just the purple that you see here with some of the non-native grasses in Griffith Park, where I happen to find it. And so when you see the close-up of the flowers, here is kind of like the two petals, the upper lip, lower lip. And here's a different view when I grew it in our garden here in Long Beach. And then we have our creeping speedwell or creeping snapdragon, Cymballaria muralis. This is also another one that tends to be a little bit a weed problem. It is a climbing individual or kind of creeping individual, but it has a very nice way of spreading, and that is by the stems creeping. They will literally plant the seed in cracks on walls and between rocks and anywhere. And so you may see photographs of Europe, and you see old buildings, and there's going to be a lot of these plants just draping over some of the walls. Again, the plant deliberately takes some of the seed pods once they finish flowering, and they'll kind of insert them into the cracks of walls and kind of plant the seeds. So Kennyworth ivy, it's a common name. So Cymballaria, and it just looks like a tiny, cutesy, small snapdragon. Uh, and also part of the native California plants, we have Galvacia, uh, commonly known as bush snapdragon, just our relations with that. Here's the flower, and here is the seed pod with that persisting style. The flower red and trumpet, natural pollinator around here would be hummingbirds, obviously, and that's why they have that shape and form and color. And so we have here Galvacia speciosa, which is the island bush snapdragon. So it is native to the Channel Islands. So Catalina has it as a wild plant. I don't think they have found any real populations in the mainland, so it is still considered a Channel Island endemic until we happen to find it naturally occurring somewhere. There's a side view of that. And then we have Kekilia, commonly known as climbing snapdragon. This is also native to our Chaparral area here in California. Here you can see the bee kind of leading to the flower. Once again, the natural pollinator would be a hummingbird, but that's not going to stop other insects to get in the flower. And this is Kekilia antheroides, looking like a snapdragon. So that would also be native here to our California area. And there's a side view of this individual. And here's a different, I guess, a snapdragon or pestiment that I happen to find. Here's just to show you some of how diverse those individuals can be. And then we have our firecracker, which is our Roselia, now becoming really popular because it is considered drought tolerant and kind of looks nice. So this is Roselia ecosetifolia, firecracker plant. I think is native to South America, but you see persistent style with the seed pod. And then once again, trumpet flower because of the pollinator, which is a hummingbird. In the face view, it looks like a trumpet. We also have the true hebe, and these are going to be native to South Africa or Africa, will be the center of distribution. So the hebe as a genus, not hebe as a common name, which can be used by many other plants. So here's kind of looks like our parahebe or some of the other plant flowers that I've shown before. And here's a few other examples of the different types of hebes that you're going to see out there. Best place to see them, if you go to Armstrong, take a walk to Armstrong, you'll see a lot of them out there for sale. Here's a few more just to show you. And fruit with the persistent style and just a dry capsule. And here it is, they are in the landscape. When they're happy, they look really nice. 90% of the time, they're not going to be happy. And I have rarely seen really good specimen out here. And then you might find this one, Globularia, not as planted as often. But once again, if you go to Armstrong, H&H, or some of those, some of the nurseries, you may see it for sale. Give it a try if you wish. So just a cluster of flowers there. Or in South America, because they are going to be tropical members. This is a tropical snapdragon that I grew kind of a while back. And so here is when it was flowering in our greenhouse. Looks like a snapdragon. And a few other climbers. So these are climber members of this family. So we have the genus Asarina, which is climbing snapdragons or climbing penstemons sometimes. That would be the common name that may be used. So here's a flower that kind of looks like a foxglove, everything else that we've seen. close-up of it. And that fruit with the persistent stigma style right there. Here's where we've grown it before. Again, this is the garden. There's the rose garden. There's the bench that is being covered with the perennial bachelor button. And so at some point we had it growing in some of the metal frames that you see kind of running around the garden. So that's when I planted a white form of that Acerina. And here's the close-up of that flower. And then close-up of that. And then Limophila, this is called rice paddy herb because it is edible and it's kind of an aquatic individual, and it's usually seen in the water with rice. And so it is harvested in Southeast Asia, and they add it to soup, and they add it to a few other things. So Limophila, here's a flower, and here's where it is for sale in some of the local markets there on Anaheim Avenue. And so with our beautiful penstemon spectabilis overlooking the city of Los Angeles and Long Beach, somewhere over here, I think we'll call it an end to this Plantaginaceae or this Snapdragon family. So take care and have a good day. Bye.